and no king since has gotten around to replacing it. It would be interesting to see King Tensail's will, to see if he leaves his ship to the next king, but probably not. That's probably not much chance of that happening. The ship Catspan sails back on has fewer sails, is smaller. It does have weapons of war attached to it, and the coloration and composition of it, it can't possibly be that ship transformed.
Okay.
The actual circumstances of which his ship vanished are completely mysterious, because anybody aboard the ship to have seen what happened went down with it.
Do we have records on earlier voyages?
So typically when a king, depending on the king, when they would take their royal vessel out, it would go out with, sometimes with a fleet, sometimes there were military reasons for doing this, but typically they would just patrol around Dunfossan waters, take in the bounties of the sea. Some kings are very religious, especially ones in Osprey would do that kind of thing, do rites or rituals at sea. Some kings were known to have family weddings. Some were known to do things for funerary rites. But the vessel was never known to cross the ocean or make harbor anywhere else but Dunfoss. Typically, you'd sail it out, you'd do what you set out to do, to a round of applause from your good people, and then sail home safely.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't happen with Catspan.
Okay.
Gus and Connor.
It's me.
You.
I love that you laugh at that every time.
It's funny every time.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's a very good voice. I enjoy it.
It's not even his voice. He stole it from that guy. Part of why I laugh is because I picture the video you got that from every time you say it.
Sorry, I derailed everything.
Gus and Connor. You're admitted to the palace. King Tensails is incredibly busy at the moment. There's a million things to deal with. There are people massing up around the palace. You see, you kind of have to walk past this crowd of people and a line of moss caps and palace guards. Because it does look like a small group of violent interlopers calling out for King Catspan have started to mass up at the palace. They just want to make sure that nobody tries to storm inside. So far, it looks like it's not coming to violence, like they didn't come up with torches and pitchforks and things. But these are people who do want to see Catspan coronated and sit the throne. And even before you get inside, you can just imagine Tensails is stewing over this. How forcefully do you attempt to receive a meeting today with Tensails? Like, how insistent are the two of you?
Well, we get the sense that he's still alive, right?
Oh, he's definitely still alive, yes.
Okay. Because I know that was a big part of why we came here.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can just leave a message. Just, that we were just making sure he was still alive because and I'll basically leave a message saying, remember the gnome underneath the city? He actually said Catspan was coming back, and
So you're not looking to insist to speak with the king?
No. I mean, he's busy. It's fine.
And how forcefully do you make inquiries about this gnome?
I will actually make inquiries about the gnome. Like, is he still alive? Did they throw his ass in jail? What?
According to one of the palace guard, Tensails did have this particular gnome retrieved from where you guys met him down in the sewers underneath the palace.
Huh?
And has had him dungeoned up. He's in one of the dungeons, presumably along with a bunch of guys from Tylest and Sapt.
How do we have enough clout to go down there and see the gnome?
You're known to be loyal allies of King Tensails.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you can try to give the Palace Guard a good reason to take you down there.
Yeah. Do we want to wait for everybody else, or do we want to go down there and strike while the iron's hot?
Well, considering all of the unknowns that are unknown right now, if there is a chance that getting an earlier unknown would be good, we should do it now.
Hey, Florian.
If that makes sense. Sorry.
Was that a yes or a no?
Yes, that's a yes.
All right.
Yes, let's go.
I was reasoning it out as I was saying it.
Go ahead and give me a persuasion check. You can make this check at advantage if the two of you are forming this argument together.
My persuasion is +3.
Go for it. Something gave me
That is an 11.
proficiency in persuasion, and I don't know what. Sorry.
What was that? It was an 11?
Yes.
The Palace Guard inform you that Ten Sails is fairly protective of his prisoners. And this kind of makes sense, because if you're a captain of a ship, like, you're not just locking up somebody in your brig and forgetting about them. The captain has a vested interest in all times in knowing who's in his brig, how they're being treated, what the plans are for their release or execution or whatever. And Ten Sails takes a more kind of hand-on approach to who's in his dungeons versus Maximilian, who would just people would just be locked up down there for all the rest of time. So, they're not going to take you down to the dungeon without clearing it through the king first. So the next question is this something you're going to put your foot down to make happen now? Or are you going to...
If we could get in, like, in the next few hours, Gus doesn't mind waiting, because then we could go collect Lucius and Alex. And then, but it's something that, like, I think we need to do as soon as possible, because, you know, just gesturing at the ocean here.
So the Palace Guard sends word back, and you guys are waiting for about an hour before Ten Sails agrees to admit you in. The guard that comes to retrieve you tells you that the king has decided to hear your insight on the matter. And when you go and meet him, for probably the first time in a few months, I would imagine. I don't think you guys have...
I went and asked him, like, for, like, an official writ to start.
Oh, that's right. I guess you had done that. So the room looks pretty much the same as it did, except the large rectangular table where you guys had come and sat last time. There are maps sprawling across it, sea charts, and the one right in front of Ten Sails, right in front of his chair, is essentially a chart of the harbor of Dunfoss. And you can see that he's got small, like, ship figurines arranged on it. There's, like, a straight edge and a compass nearby as he and some of his advisors were going over the map. It's very clear that they're planning on, like, what if we had to try to assault this ghost ship with the firepower we have at hand in the harbor currently. And he's not in a good mood as you walk in, and he's standing looming over this map. He looks up. Gustavus, come over here and take a look at this.
Gus will go over there and look at the chart.
He's got two charts in front of him. The one is the first one that I described. The second one is one going north up the Dunfossan coast, up towards where, near to where you guys crashed in your ridiculous rocket tower a few weeks ago. And he points out to a couple locations that he's got marked on the map. He tells you that they're smugglers' coves. People that he's done business with in good trade in the past, where his name has some worth. And he's considering the logistics of whether these people are going to be able to smuggle munitions into Dunfoss if need be without coming through the harbor. And he knows that you and your people have recently had a lot of work done at the Shallows, where your barge is. And he wants to know the state of... It's not an official harbor, but ships or boats do come in and land there with some relative frequency. He wants to ask you if it would be possible if like small sapper vessels could be brought into Wharftown or the Shallows and disguised long enough where like one surgical strike could be planned.
Possible. I'm assuming that like boats are fairly common in the area for people to own small boats.
Well, if you're in Wharftown or the Shallows, we're talking about like very small, like fishing boats, skiffs, and rafts kind of things.
But that's what he's talking about, disguising them as that.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that would be very possible. It would be because there's a lot of civilian craft in the area of about that size.
He also tells you that he spent some time trying to find reliable maps of any of the underground areas beneath the city. He wants to know if it's possible to move vessels from one side of the city to the other underground in any way. And these efforts have been stymied, and he's not happy about it. Nobody seems to know for sure. So he asks you if you would know of anybody in Dunfoss, having lived here the past few years, where this knowledge might be kept. Keeping in mind, I mean, he just went through this whole process with Tylesnus Apt, keeping stuff from him, and he had them demolished.
I don't know if Gus would know the answer to this question.
Almost certainly not.
Yeah.
But you know who might know the answer to the question, having had dealings with some of Dunfoss's criminal underworld.
Oh, right. And Gus will say, well, you don't, I mean, obviously you don't have any problem dealing with the criminal underground. Are you aware of the gentleman?
Only by reputation.
He might be able to answer your question, but he is probably going to be reticent to meet with you after, you know, what you did with Tylesnus Apt. But
And he kind of
your best.
gives you the stink eye. What do you mean, what I did with Tylesnus Apt?
You disbanded them. I mean...
He corrects you. He says, I issue justice upon them for crimes against king and crown.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He reminds you, too, that your the premises of your newly appointed magical guild sits on top of the crater caused by the destruction rained upon this city by Tylesnus Apt.
And Gus holds up his hand and says, I'm not passing judgment on what happened. Like,
And
not
this...
judging you, like, whatever thing. I'm just stating, Your Majesty, I'm just stating that the gentleman is a very cautious criminal who likes to maintain both a very... He likes to be sure about things.
He looks over at Connor and gives Connor a very... like, the look on his face is like, we're talking about this now. And he asks you, your opinion, describing what he did to help rein in the destructive forces of Tylesnus Apt. And you would call this justice, would you not?
I'm trying to think of Connor. Connor says...
Oh no, we're going to prison.
Connor says... After what they did to me and my coworkers, absolutely. Justice was served.
And he looks back at Gus, with his kind of like, see, Connor agrees with me. Why can't we all get on the same page about this?
And when his head is turned, Connor flashes a look at Gus like,
Gus, make an insight check.
Yes. No.
No? Did you roll a no?
I-
Is this your no here?
That's a pretty big no.
Tensale stays on this point of argument for a few minutes. He really did not like how you referred to him, what he did to type. Like, this is something that, for some reason, he's stuck on in this conversation for a few minutes. You do manage to get him back talking about the gentleman again, but he's being very stubborn and very cagey. And eventually he just gets very exasperated and blurts out, "Are you telling me that this man, this gentleman, would know the information that I need about possible ways to sail underneath the city? Underground rivers or old sewers?"
I'm not trying to be like surreptitious about it. Like, I'm just outright saying yes. Like, he's your best bet because he smuggles things in and out of the city for a living. Like, that's like, Gus would have been very direct with the information. Like,
Then you will go to this man and you'll find this out and you'll bring me good news. A map or a chart, something that I can use planning a counteroffensive against a spectral vessel that has arrived washed into my city's harbor.
crap.
And he turns his attention back to his maps.
Your Majesty, we just wanted to talk to the gnome. Can we talk to the gnome?
He looks up and says, "What gnome?"
You don't remember the gnome underneath the city that we asked you to collect? The one that...
"Speak to my jailer about it."
Uh-huh. Okay. He told us to come see you.
Well, you were speaking to one of that palace guard.
Oh. We'll do that. And
He's the one that foresaw all this. We said he was crazy.
the main reason...
Back and...
Watch your back, King. Your Majesty. I don't know what to call you. Your Majesty.
He doesn't like any part of that sentence at all.
That was me. That was the player. That was not
Okay.
Gus. That was a brain.
So you don't tell the King of Dunfoss, who's in a bad mood, "Hey, buddy, watch your back."
No, I mean, like, they said, like we're going to just mention it, like, part of the, just remind him, part of the thing the gnome was saying was that Prince Caspian, or I would have been fine.
Neither of you guys should ever talk to anybody. No.
What are you? This is like Connor's best behavior the whole campaign.
Connor has been really good today.
You know what? I'm just gonna say, all right, Your Majesty, thank you for your time, and I'm going to leave.
See, that's how you talk to your king, right there.
Guess we're gonna go talk to a jailer.
However, it didn't cheer him up at all.
Also,
No.
now we have to talk to the...
By the time you find the jailer, he's received word to allow you into the cells. And as you recall, there are several tiers underneath the main palace. The dungeon you guys explored was kind of an uncharted, very bottom tier that King Maximilian's people had started to kind of refurbish some parts of, but not all of it. You're not going quite that deep. But he does have cells down underneath, and there are still people, members of Tylesnus Apt here. And the jailer brings you over to the cell, which is supposedly holding this gnome. And there's a wrought iron door with a small slat on the outside of it that can be dragged open. And the jailer peers in, and he kind of holds his candle up to the door, and then he gets this shock of fear on his face, and he drops, and the candle clatters to the ground as he steps back from the door, like something has really startled him.
Gus peers into the cell.
You have dark vision, right?
Yes.
The gnome is here, but he's slumped back against the wall, and it's impossible to tell whether it's the same gnome, because his face and his belly have burst open, leaving just like an empty husk inside of his head, like something came along and just scooped out his brains and his organs.
Connor, you hunt monsters, right? Do you know
Yeah.
of anything that could scoop out something's brains and stomach?
Well,
You should think on that. I really think we should go collect everybody else. I don't think we should be moving around alone.
yeah, we
Back to the barge.
Yes.
Okay.
Gus just kind of bust in. Alexander!
Alex is at the Cartographer's Guild.
But by that evening, you guys have reconvened
Yeah.
back at the barge, having learned what you can learn from your various sources. And none of it's good news, apparently.
Alex,
What's up?
what could scoop out a man's brains
make him explode.
and make his the description? What was the description again?
So, his body was laying there, but like the front of his head and parts of his abdomen by his stomach just looked like an empty husk. Like something had burst a hole in his body and they scooped out his innards in both areas. Just an empty cavity in his head and his stomach.
I mean,
Could he have turned into something like that one? Like Drudolph turned into the bug?
There was nothing else in the cell. Like there was no monster standing there, if that's what you're asking.
I mean, did the jailer say anything about it?
Oh my God! He shrieked. He dropped his candle, and he might have peed a little.
the bursting of the stomach is the weird bit.
Actually,
That's the thing I'm unsure of, because
can
any
I?
number of creatures can feast on the innards of a mortal, but this sounds like something came from it.
Can well, I already didn't do this, but can I have said that Gus? Would they have let me examine the body?
No, they wouldn't open the door without leave from the king.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought. But is there anything that Gus could have gotten with like a from the distance, like medicine check?
No.
Okay. Just asking for additional information. That's all.
No, just the horrific physical description of the body and the trauma thereupon.
So either something burst out or something cored him like an apple.
Probably burst out.
I mean, I've been thinking of an automated apple core, but I just don't eat that many apples.
Now I'm picturing Alex like developing these devices and going to the king and says, "Give me access to your dungeon so I can experiment with my new device."
Your brain goes to the strangest places when we talk about horrific bodily dismemberment, Alex. You just like I don't understand sometimes. Anyway, the king wants me to go speak to the gentleman and get him to show him all of his secret smuggling tunnels underneath the city. And yeah. That's going to be a conversation.
So let's get some nighttime actions. What are you guys doing tonight?
I would like all of you to come with me to speak to the gentleman.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think there's a very real chance this ends in violence.
Not necessarily. I mean, he doesn't have to show his entire network. He just has to show him a very controlled, coordinated path.
Right, we'll go with that. Because that's exactly the kind of person that Tinsels is. He is the kind of guy that is okay with just some of the thing. Yep.
Are all four of you going to go try to meet with the gentleman?
Sure. If they'll let me.
It's been a while since I've used this map.
We should swing by and see where's she at? We should see what Petunia Grey Color's doing.
I guess the dead man's den isn't there anymore. So the gentleman and his people are in a part of the neighborhood called Tin Whistle Corner. And Gus, we'll say that you grease the proper palms. Go ahead and erase 4 silvers.
Okay.
You hear that the gentleman will meet you at a public house in Wharftown. They're using a nice euphemism for a brothel, basically, that he's recently come into possession of and is operating a new business out of. This kind of thing has always gone on in Dunfoss, but it was clamped down upon somewhat while King Maximilian was in office. But it does seem now that this sort of work, it's like they're kind of testing the waters to make sure that they like maybe the cultural shift is swinging back in their direction and they can get the whores a-flowing again. But they're calling it a public house, being very polite about it. And it's a very lavishly, almost gaudily decorated place. You see a sign hasn't been hung out in the front yet, but as you go in, you're almost immediately mobbed by very friendly women offering a variety of services. Someone takes notice of you, Gus, pretty straight away, and you manage to let them know that you're here to speak with the gentleman. You're left to your own devices while the message is being delivered. Is anybody doing anything in particular at the public house while waiting on the gentleman to call you in?
Work first, play later.
You've had previous meetings with the gentleman in like basements underground and in derelict properties in Wharftown that were falling apart. This is a very different sort of meeting. It does remind you a little bit of the Flying Pig, the front that he maintained in a room filled with cushions and color. It's not quite that exotic, but he has a very nice private room off to the side that he can see some construction is still going on therein. The gentleman is alone in the room when you enter. He sends out two ladies that he was speaking with. And he tells you, or he starts asking you small talk kinds of questions. He's going to set this up as kind of a private VIP or drinking area that you could come and pay a little bit of extra for services on top. He's being, like, playing his hand at using eloquent euphemisms and polite references to very bawdy things. And is asking for some various opinions. Does it happen that any of you have any sort of opinions on what you like in a whorehouse?
I'll be honest. I haven't given it a lot of thought for Connor.
No, me either.
No. I would be very surprised if any of us had.
I picture the gentleman asking this question and Connor just going, poontang. That's what I like to see in a whorehouse. He expresses surprise that after it's been close to a year since your last major dealing with him, he understands now that you're big head honchos at court. You have the ear of the king, and what is it? What sort of business would you have for a lowly proprietor of night services?
So,
Before you say anything, I want to get an individual insight check from all four of you.
for Gus.
Can anybody beat an 18?
Connor got a 17, so no.
No.
Okay. Gus. The gentleman does seem to be playing with you a little bit. Like, he's insinuating that you all have moved on to bigger and better things beyond the sort of thuggery and back alley dealings that you might have gotten up to maybe this time last year. You get the impression, and anybody else who passed a 15 on this roll, that this conversation is going to go a lot better if you don't, or if you make him think that you're not acting above your station. He wants that, however this ends, he doesn't want this to end with him feeling like you think you're better than him.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So with that in mind, how would you like to tell him that you're better than him?
Don't think I am.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. Gus is just gonna treat him like he always has, with the previous respect of a previous employer, and that he parted on amicable terms with. And he's gonna be like, so you're aware there's a ghost ship in the harbor, right?
Oh yes, it's the talk of the town. I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but I hear it's a sight to behold. Gus, would you mind standing over here, please?
Sure. And I'll step over where he asks and just continue the conversation.
Okay.
I like to think Gus is probably, like, used to just this.
So, as you're continuing the conversation, what he's doing is he has a he has a trunk nearby. He opens it up, and looking in is just this mass of various types of clothes that he's pulling out. And you can see that he's got women's clothing, dresses and cloaks and little negligees and things. And through the whole conversation, he's kind of holding them up to your body and looking at them, kind of disapprovingly, like he's trying to find something that's a good fit for you.
You know that's not my color. Anyway, the the king Ugh. He wants somebody to show him how to smuggle small vessels through the city.
Now, what would a pirate captain possibly know about smuggling, I wonder? He says as he places a broad-rimmed violet hat upon your head.
That's like, puts it down. Like, he just... Gus just lets him do this. He doesn't care.
Okay.
Whatever. Like, is that a rhetorical question?
He definitely said it sarcastically.
Yeah. Anyway. Seeing how I used to work with you. He wanted me to come and ask, and I knew how to get in touch with you.
What does he need from me exactly?
So... I'm going to be 100% straight with the gentleman here. I'm going to just basically, like, so he has contingency plans for having to assault the ship, and he needs pathways to stealthily get small vessels from one side of the city to the other.
You don't mean to suggest that I have secret tunnels to pass goods into High Court Harbor, do you? That
No.
seems like the sort of thing that a man in my business would prefer the king not to know, assuming it was true, obviously.
Right.
In fact, this sounds suspiciously like the sort of thing that a man might get hanged for if it came to light at court that I have knowledge of these things.
Do you have any chartreuse in there?
I'm not sure you pronounced that correctly.
I know what I said. But, I mean, on the one hand, that is a very real possibility, but on the other hand, 10 cells is pretty generous to people that, help him.
Yes, I see the work that he's done on the quarters of Tylestinus Apt recently.
That's what happens to people who don't help him.
He looks over at the other three of you. Says, you all have had good and fortunate business dealing with King Ten Sails.
Yep. I would suggest if you look, Ten Sails is a pirate. My opinion is if you do a favor for him, he's going to look the other way on most of the other things. He's not going to make a big progression out of dragging you into court.
So you're to send back word to the king of my decision. I imagine surveys could be done of the old sewers and flooded tunnels. Maybe something in the natural caves and areas closer to the cliffs.
Well, you know how it is. When you need something done quick, you hire a professional.
I've been having a devil of a time, you see, properly furnishing my new establishment. I would think perhaps 12,000 pieces of gold would be appropriate for a service of this nature, as well as, let's say, an assurance that the good works we do here won't fall on the wrong side of a Mosscat patrol?
I will convey. I'll nod at him and I'll tell Tencells what he needs to do. Well, not what he needs to do. Gosh, I'm having a hard time braining today.
Would you
pass that along?
And if you would convey a personal message from me, and he says this as he kind of is pinning this flowery brooch to the front of your armor. Dwarf King, Pirate King, Ghost King, it matters not to me. The business continues. And he gives you kind of a condescending little slap on the cheek. He says, go. Tell your master what I've said. Let's see if we can open a negotiation.
All right.
Gus, I will need the hat back.
But it does set my eyes off ever so. And then I'll take it off and hand it to him.
Is anybody else doing anything very late at night tonight? These are actions you would take in lieu of taking a long rest tonight.
No.
No.
Okay.
Connor would spend time at the whorehouse afterwards.
Is it open?
Arrangements could be made. There are drinks and women on site. Connor, go ahead and embrace however much gold you're spending at the gentleman's establishment.
Woo!
Maybe that's what he should name it. The Gentleman's Establishment for Gentlemen.
Okay. I honestly expected when you started describing the whorehouse and you said the Dead Man's Den isn't there anymore. I expected that's to be where the whorehouse was.
No, the Deadman's Den just stands boarded up at the moment.
Connor has 20 gold.
That's a lot of gold.
He will put half of that towards the gentleman's establishment.
Okay, that's quite a lot of gold to spend at this establishment.
Oh, yeah.
That's like he's just swimming in whores.
I mean, thinking about, like, God, when was the last time Connor was actually genuinely laid?
Connor walks in, waves 10 gold pieces. He's like, all these women, throw them in a bathtub, cover them in oil, and I'm just gonna dive in.
Like Scrooge McDuck, but like...
With whores, yes.
It's awful. It's an awful
Wow.
image.
Wow! Oh, my brain is broken today. No, your brain seems fine.
Like before he dives, like that explosive duck corkscrew penis thing happens.
Oh my.
Ducks have the most amazing genitals in the animal kingdom. It's astounding.
That's what happened to Connor in the Feywilds. That's why he doesn't like
I was just about to say that. Is that what you think Connor's penis is? That he was in the Feywild so long?
Yes, that's exactly.
That's how he got his sparkly powers? Okay.
So everybody can take the benefits of a long rest. Connor, you can take the benefits of a very expensive long rest.
Oh, boy.
He gets his powers from his duck penis.
The sun does rise the next day, but it's a very gray day. It's like the day after a massive storm has rolled through or something. It's still very dreary, although the weather does not turn to rain. And the news on the streets today, the new thing on everybody's lips, is now when you step out to the harbor and looking out over the water, you can still see the ship docked there. But now, it's not entirely there. It's semi-transparent. You can see the buildings or the harbor or the ocean behind it, depending on your vantage point. It's like somebody has turned the opacity down to 80%. And this does seem to be a direct function of there being more sunlight today. But again, there's no movement on the deck of the ship. King Catsman has not made a second appearance.
Are the bodies still there?
No, by this point, somebody in House Humberth had managed to find a way to collect
Shot
them.
them? Did they use a hook shot?
You have no idea, but probably not, because nobody has ever used a hook shot for anything.
They're not hook shot I can't say it again. That was a one-time thing. I'll never be able to make that joke ever again.
So what are our plans for today? We'll take some morning actions down.
Do we want to?
Should I roll for my long rest?
Oh, yes, you should. Thank you.
Does he need to roll for 3 months of long rests?
It's an 8.
Okay.
Should we follow up on the lead of the Duke of House Umber?
Yes. I think we should, but let's swing by the Palace District and leave a note.
Always leave a note.
Yeah. Just kind of leave the note with what the,
So are we spending the morning delivering the gentleman's message? Is that the idea?
Sounds like it.
Okay.
I was
So
just going to leave a note.
when you leave word of the gentleman's... Well, so you tell him that the gentleman wants 12,000 gold pieces and his assurance that prostitution will remain legal in Dunfoss. Do you put it to him just like that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And what are our afternoon actions as you spend the morning finding the correct people to move that message through the palace?
Who? All right. This is a question for the party because I just don't remember. How did we find out that what's his name was a Rakshasa?
Yes, work and good.
Deep investigation, mostly.
I think like
'Cause I remember.
40% guesswork.
We did
Yeah.
go out on a bit of a limb, trying to.
I remember going through the. We had to pick the thing from the monster manual.
Yeah.
But I don't remember how we got to that point.
We did some research and it was lots of different.
So
it wasn't just like one thing.
You
So
think there's a
Connor-
DC that would do that. For that, no.
yeah, that's exactly it. Connor is. It's annoying him that he doesn't know what happened to this gnome and wants to do research towards figuring out what
Well-
possibly could have done that.
We technically still have the entire library of Telestus app in the in the bag of holding.
Nah, it was garbage Telestus app. I don't know what Lucius did with the real Telestus app.
Journey and Lucius went through and cataloged all of it. So right now it's locked up somewhere in the palace. The magical tomes and things were handed over to the king as well, except the really dangerous ones which got sold across the ocean to the School of Senses. Because it's actually much safer in the hands of warlocks.
Yeah. You right.
I feel like that was sarcasm.
Yeah, it seems sarcasmy to me. I mean, I'm no expert.
Yeah. No, you're not. So let's just.
So it sounds like Connor has to go to the castle and go through a whole bunch of now unorganized books to try and find something.
Well, they're cataloged.
No, they're well,
Okay, they are cataloged.
I'm assuming Lucius didn't just throw them all into a big pile.
No.
Okay. Then yeah, that's. Sorry, this was very long. That's what Connor wants to do.
Okay. Connor, make an investigation check. What languages do you speak?
Connor speaks. He speaks Common, Draconic, Infernal, and Sylvan.
Wow, that's actually a really good spread
Okay.
for like non-humanoid languages.
Is anybody else assisting Connor in looking through Tylesis App's archives for...
Yeah, Alex will help.
Okay.
Good work for Alex.
So one of you make that investigation check, and you can make it at advantage. Are Gus and Lucius doing something else?
I have a feeling this is right up Alex's alley.
Do you mind if I make the check?
Be my guest.
So I still need afternoon actions for Gus and Lucius.
Lucius is going to follow up with the Duke of House Umber.
I will go with you because I don't think any of us should be traveling alone. Since there's-
32 on investigation.
Jeez.
Okay.
Very high number.
There is a Humberth estate in the city of Dunfoss because the family does maintain a presence in the city. They have business dealings here. A lot of their maritime trade, of course, comes in through the harbors here. So whenever somebody from their homestead is living in the city, they're staying at this manor, and it's a vast estate in the city limits. It's actually it sits in the shadow of the Temple District in Silver Bluffs, and so relatively close to the part of the city that you guys blew up not long ago. Yeah, I'm blaming that on you guys.
Excuse you.
In fact, Gus, you've probably worked closely with men of House Humberth recently, as they have made a big public showing of putting forth resources to repair the broken wall overlooking the bluffs. For this reason, Lucius and Gorse, what pretense do you give for coming to speak with Duke Rune? Remember, Lucius, that nobody knows that he's here. He has not made his pronouncement public that he was returning to the city. This is kind of secret information that you know.
Okay, so
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, like, so what are we hoping, like, what was the exact nature of the lead? Like, the fact that this gentleman is here?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested to know why he is here and what connection that he might have with this.
You think the timing is suspicious?
Yeah, I think the timing is suspicious. But my pretense, I'm thinking, is I want to follow up on the well-being of the man that Alexander and I so gallantly saved his life the other day, where the other two men fell, and yeah, check up on him. That's the pretense for getting in.
Yep.
Okay.
And
So on a typical day, just rolling up to a manor house like this, and I mean, you guys have hit a lot of dead ends trying to get information out of nobility in Dunfoss. A lot of them, because they have such wealth and business tied up in the city's dealings, it's difficult to get them to sit down and give you a straight answer on anything. However, when you arrive at the Humberth estate, you're not given access to the house at all. Instead, you're directed to their gardens. And there's this brilliant fountain with iconography of Osprey and Zerbo in the center of it. And before too much longer, the Duke himself comes out to join you there. And he's an aged man with a gray face and hair and a well-kept beard. And he walks with most of his weight applied on a walking stick with a very, very large jewel set into the pommel. He's looking very gruff, and he looks unhappy to be meeting with anybody at this point. But he's polite and courteous when he arrives. He wishes the both of you good morrow. He points his cane at Gustavus. Says, "You're the man who is establishing the Spellblades.
that I am.
Some of our boys were helping on your premises, repairing the wall nearby."
You have very good retainers. They were of great help.
What is the benefit of having a Spellblade, may I ask?
Well, there's a lot of magical Basically, Gus is just going to go into like the bullet points of sometimes you have magical things, and it helps to have it be at least a little familiar in it. And in addition to that, when people look at, there's also the matter of surprise and underestimation, and just kind of go like through all of the just the bullet points.
He wonders
that
if you find people frequently underestimate you.
He kind of shrugs. People look at me and they see the plate armor. Yeah, they see the armor, and they think, "Oh, I can shoot a fireball at that guy." And then they don't expect when I magically protect myself and then punch them in the face.
And you're Lucius Udoc.
Service.
Forgive me, it's been many years since I've had face-to-face dealings with anyone in your family.
Perfectly all right.
And I'm to understand that the two of you are detectives.
Indeed, we are. Flumph,
Yep.
Flumph Inc.
We have very reasonable rates.
For example, if I were to be under the impression that my wife had a paramour, I would hire you to find the man's identity. Yes?
That is one avenue of investigation that we could be employed in. Yes.
Looks back at Gus, and in such an endeavor you would find the element of surprise to be useful.
Gus shrugs.
Not much opportunity to defend against a fireball, though, I shouldn't wager.
You would be surprised.
There are a lot of investigations that do get sticky from time to time.
People tend to, Gus looks at Lucius and kind of shrugs. People tend to get upset when their secrets are being poked into.
Indeed.
Words have been had, fireballs have been thrown.
And you see he straightens up a little bit when you say that. So on the subject of people having their secrets looked into, I would ask then, and I will be blunt, who hired you to find the information that I was in the city of Dunfoss this month?
Was discovered ancillary to other investigations.
Gold is exchanging hands and my name came up. I would like to know why.
I mean, for a question for you, his people drove out and like threw their flag up for King the Caspian.
A couple of his clerks associated with his house did. There's no actual strong evidence that the Duke or his family members or even the people who are running his business in town have declared for Caspian. And so far that hasn't happened, at least in any official capacity. One or two houses have over the course of the last 24 hours or so, but specifically Humberth has not. Although his name is in, or his family name, I should say, is in higher proximity, simply because it's his men that died on the ghost ship. He tells you that many people have been making inquiries about his connection to the ghost ship, but so you're the first ones to arrive that knew that the Patriarch of House Humberth was in the city. He wants to know who is funding your investigation, however ancillary it might be, that his name came up and you discovered this thing.
In 10 sales.
He looks at Gus as though to see whether Gus agrees with that answer or not.
Probably
Yeah.
the closest thing to the truth that Lucius can think of right now.
I mean, sounds right to Gus.
And Lucius will say, I wanted to. I have a few contacts in town that I have some. Words are hard as well for me. I'm sorry. I've had contact and cordial social connections with the Keyskin embassy. Yes.
I have heard that King Tensails has a predilection towards... What is a polite way to put this? I suppose there isn't one. A predilection towards temper tantrums.
Flights of fancy. But temper tantrums is also, from what I've experienced of the man, yes.
What assurance do I have that if I insist in your investigation and the king does not like what he hears, that he will not retaliate against me or my house?
If you wish it, your name will never come up.
Both of you make me an insight check.
Five.
5 and 3, okay? He asked Lucius if Lucius has any pull in the Keyskin embassy.
I do have established something of a rapport with the ambassador's daughter.
A rapport.
Friendship.
He reaches up and strokes his beard, son. But she was not the one who gave you my name.
No, sir.
I want the name of the man who did tell you I was in town. Who in the Keyskin embassy betrayed my trust? You can just tell me yes or no. The guy doesn't actually have a name.
No, I'm wondering if Lucius would try to press as to what his fate will be at this point.
Okay.
And fine, Lucius will reveal the man's name.
Okay. And you can tell that he doesn't know who this person is. But he nods. He tells you, as it happens, he does have information that King Tensails might find useful. And that he now believes it pertains to the arrival of this ghost ship. But before the ship actually arrived, he had no possible way of knowing that. The problem is, this is a very sensitive piece of information that if he were to release to, say, the king's detectives, if the king learned of this tidbit. It may perhaps implicate him or his house in... Let's say it wouldn't buy him any favor at court.
Certainly not. All we're here for is the safety of Dunfos. That's always been my guiding ethos with regard to my work. Is what's best for Dunfos.
How many Udocs have sat the throne, I wonder?
I can't recall of any in the family.
There haven't been any.
Lucius is polite about that.
Then he tells you, then let me refresh your memory, that there have not been any. He says that. He says that his family have been stewards of House Dunfos for many, many generations. And that if not for the ridiculous predilection of allowing shopkeepers and broom pushers and magical sycophants to select from amongst themselves, the city would have more wealth and power and prestige than it does today.
Lucius nods.
Are you nodding like you're offering agreement, or that you're offering that you understand him?
That I understand him.
And he shakes his head a little bit and tells you, you're too young to have remembered Juliana's reign. The prosperity Dunfos saw. People are quick to forget. My great-grandfather married a Kiskin princess. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Shakes his head again. None at the embassy even remembered her name. I don't trust your king. And I don't trust this city. And I don't trust most of the people in it. If I reveal what I know, the king will move against me.
Isn't it better for the information to come from you then? If it makes you look bad, then...
He name drops a cousin or a brother-in-law or something that he has who is a member of Tylestinus Apt who thought the same thing and then died in one of Tensale's dungeons.
Yeah. That's awkward.
Tensales does not take a light touch when it comes to punitive measures of people he thinks are acting against him.
Would it be possible for this information to be plausibly explained as coming from somewhere other than you?
Not in a way that won't tie it to my house.
I mean, obviously you have something in mind, otherwise you wouldn't have even brought up the existence of this information.
Make an insight check.
I see you drawing a dice jail, and then you immediately roll the dice. You're gonna put me in dice jail.
Into the dice jail. How'd you do?
Insight?
Mm-hmm.
That's a 14.
14. He's taken aback a little bit, and you realize that he was under the assumption you already knew he had some kind of choice information. Because you're investigators, you found him here, even though nobody's supposed to know that he's in town. And after that, he clams up, because he realizes he's already slipped up once and told you something because he already thought you knew it, and it turns out you didn't. So after that, you don't get much out of him at all, except curt, polite, but very short answers, and very to the point. And the gist of the conversation from that point on is that he's going to look after the interests of his house first and foremost.
Okay.
And unless something drastic happens before the end of the conversation, he eventually excuses himself. He tells you that you may enjoy the beauty of his gardens for as long as you like. But he tells you that in a way where the subtext is, but leave as soon as you can.
Lucius will. Curious conversation, eh?
Alex, you rolled something ridiculous on this investigation check, yes?
32, yeah.
32.
I helped.
Connor, I'm assuming that you focused your studying on Fey and undead creatures. Is that a fair assumption?
Definitely undead. Would Connor have the control to focus on more than Fey? Yeah, I think he would. He is more committed to being a monster hunter than a
Okay.
Fey
Then,
evangelist, I guess we'll say.
Connor, you don't find anything of importance relating to this incident, that, as far as you can tell. But Alex has been instrumental in guiding you towards exactly the book you need on any subject. Like, he just has a knack for this. If you had done this alone, yeah, you might have gotten on the same track eventually, but you feel like you would have spent a lot of time flipping through just a lot of nonsense and getting caught up in the funny pictures. And none of these books have little pop-up scenes, which really more books should have pop-up scenes, just in general.
For real. Yeah.
So, any book that you have access to, any 5th edition book that has monster stat blocks in it, find one Fey or undead creature in any of those books, and Connor has learned everything about that type of creature over the course of his study. Anything that is a Fey or an undead.
Alright.
Pick one and you've learned everything about it. Alex, meanwhile.
Yeah.
You start honing in, because while Connor has a predilection for Fey and undead creatures, you have a predilection more for aberrant creatures. In the vein of Illithids and whatnot. And you come up against an ancient text that has been through many, many revisions, with a foreword indicating that this text has been converted into Gnomish via deep speech. Does Alex speak deep speech?
I don't think so. No, he does. He does.
He does. Okay.
It's
Then,
effectively undercommon, I think, in this edition.
well, deep speech is a separate.
Yeah, yeah.
Language
I mean,
undercommon.
oh no, yeah, no. I speak deep speech. Yes,
Okay.
Just because no.
So when you find that book, you're able to go further than that and find the original tome written in deep speech then and understand it. There is a type of Illithid ritual that jumps out at you in light of what you've heard happen to this gnome. Essentially, they process a particular kind of underdark mushroom. They do something with the spores. They're charged psionically, and these spores can be made to be very, very light, that they can travel on air great distances without being noticed. They can be slipped into drinks. They can be applied to like an edge of a weapon and enter into a bloodstream like that. There are many, many, many methods of using these spores, and they're parasitic in nature. They don't poison you. They don't cause you to get sick right away. What happens is the spores are essentially a psionically charged larval creature. And it can latch on to one of your internal organs. And over time, it develops an intelligence of its own. And all of a sudden, your kidney or your lungs or whatever are clawing their way out of your chests. And the creature is this organ with claws attached to it that has vast psionic abilities. Illithids have been making use of these spores against deep gnomes, against drow, against all sorts of other enemies. You're thinking if this happened to this gnome, this is exactly what it's describing. His brain and his stomach and his... just tore its way out of his own chest. And there are gruesome diagrams.
It's a good thing we don't know any, Oh, wait, she can't kill people.
Dacinary?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's cursed to not be able to kill people, right?
She's not allowed
So
to kill
she
people.
says. That'd be a really good lie. I'm a drow, but I can't kill people, so don't worry about me.
So that's what your 32 gets you. Alex, you become convinced this must have been what happened to the gnome, and at this point,
Okay.
if you were able to examine the body, it would basically just be confirming what you know. And you guys are so good at research that Connor learned amazing things about one creature of his choice. Let's go ahead and take our break here for about 15 minutes while we think about what we're going to do for evening actions. I will drop the blindfold here. Go ahead and get your coffee, get your bagel. We'll take 15 minutes. We'll reconvene at 5 o'clock in the only time zone that matters.
Greenwich Mean Time?